On this? All right, Fred, you can turn on the recording.
Recording is on.
Okay, I'm sorry, I just put these together on my way over, so it's not set up as PowerPoint slides. I'm just going to read through this kind of document from the top, use them as my PowerPoint from top to bottom. The first point, badly spelled, is that this was originally built for me. So, I mean, I built this system. I had no idea of sharing it with other people or making it adaptable or whatever. It was for me to quickly screen investments. And I think you'll see that kind of the legacy of that as we actually look at the product. I want Neil to also make some comments because Neil was the one who's really pushed moving it from something just built for me personally to something that might be useful to other people. All right, so that's kind of my opening excuse for what's here. Now, let's move on. So what did I want to do? Basically, I started with an equation in my head that, to me, is how I want to rank potential investments. And that is that my value of an investment equals the probability of a successful exit times the share of that company that I own times the value of that company at that successful exit. So that's the numerator, the denominator is the dollars that I invest. Now, as Dudley pointed out when he looked at this some time ago, a better version of this would probably be using net present value rather than the simple value of the investment at liquidity. I'll probably incorporate that as we go forward, but assuming that almost all the deals are done in, say, a 4 to 6 year time frame, I don't think that's by anywhere close to being the major problem with this approach. All right, so I'm repeating myself, but my goal in setting this up is to, at every point in time, improve this estimate of my dollar value, but to always have that estimate in mind. That is what I'm trying to do, is maximize that thing. All right, now, if we more generally say, well, why a tool? Why do we need this thing, et cetera? There's a book called Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. That book is actually kind of a summary of a very long history of work by Kahneman, Tversky, Ross, Nesbitt. There are a lot of these other guys out there who've worked on the issue of human judgment and how human judgment works in tasks such as diagnosis, recruit evaluation, et cetera. Try to summarize this vast literature, but the way that I think this is not distorting Daniel's work too much, to say that kind of the general idea he's putting forward in that book is that there is a fast mode of thinking and a slow mode of thinking. The fast mode of thinking was developed to help human beings deal with things like running away from the bear. You don't have a lot of time. You look at this thing, you say, that thing's got big teeth, it looks like it wants to eat me, I'm out of here. There's a slow method of thinking. This would be much more, if you went back to our ancestors, it would be figuring out, okay, what kind of cave do I want to live in? All right, how many times do I hunt in this district? What is the water supply here? But it's a much more deliberative, measured, gathering information, thinking about this in not in real time, but over time kind of process. And Kahneman's message is that you don't want to use the fast skill set to make what are basically slow decisions, or decisions that you should use the slow mindset on. But yet we're forced into doing that. And so what I'm trying to do at a very fundamental level is, in a situation where we're forced into acting quickly, to try to still bring to bear on that our slow decision-making processes. The bottom line, well, not the bottom line, but if you look at Daniel, what he does is to try to drive home this idea that there are slow and fast thinking, and you don't want to use fast thinking on slow tasks, is he looks at a whole lot of judgment tasks and looks at statistical information on human performance on these tasks, and tasks such as health diagnosis, recruit evaluation. There's some work on decisions by judges, etc. It just shows that we're very inconsistent at these things. We're inconsistent in the information we use. We're inconsistent in weighting information the same way on multiple occasions. We use open-ended scales that are inconsistent in the way we apply them, and relates more to Neil's idea about what we want to use. The other problem with open-ended scales is they don't communicate well. In other words, again, I built this all for myself, but as Neil went out to think about using this in groups, there's the issue of if I use an open-ended scale, my 5 may not be the same as somebody else's 5. Right. Then the idea then of using the tool was to not do the judgment part to do the judgment part at home. In other words, to build the rules into the software where I can sit there and really think about them. And the thing that then I do in the evaluation session is not a judgment thing, it's an observation thing. So this is not perfect by any means at this time, but the idea of this thing is that in a session like we just finished, where we're screening companies, all I'm doing is recording observations. I am trying to avoid making judgments. I'm not doing that really well. I'm making a lot of judgments, but that's what that's kind of the thing I'm aiming for, is to do that. All right, I think.
Judgment, you mean the fast decision.
Exactly, judgments are basically kind of a fast decision. It's just saying, well, I like this better, I like that worse, that kind of thing. I'm actually trying to avoid that. The other advantage of all of this is that it allows for statistical improvement. Since I'm now recording observations as much as possible, I can compare over time what observations actually relate to successful outcomes. Let me pause there. I'm going to show you the tool next. All right, so that's all background of the tool and where it comes from. Let me pause there, and particularly Fred, do you have any questions?
No, I'm just listening. Continue on.
Okay, anybody, you guys have?
Your review of Kahneman is great. I've studied Kahneman for more than a decade. Very familiar, read his book. His work is constant in the financial industry now, and he won the Nobel Prize for showing us why we think the way we do, not what we think.
Yeah. With Tversky.
Who passed away from cancer.
Yeah.
With Tversky, who passed away from cancer. He was at Stanford, and was Daniel Kahneman and Tversky were working together.
Yeah,
I think they both got the Nobel Prize together.
Together, yeah, they did. They got the Nobel Prize together.
And so they had a lot of discussions with Yale and Stanford.
Yeah.
And I'm really a big. I admire.
Yeah.
You.
Okay. So I know people want to see the tool, and we're kind of moving slow on that, but I also want to give Neil a chance to sort of put in his 2 bits, because again, his vision of what to do with this was very different than mine.
So what I started with was the idea. There were 2 things. One was I started with the idea of being able to take objective and quantifiable notes by being exposed to opportunities in forums like this and a lot of other forums which are, like Max's 2-minute pitch sessions and some of the earlier stage events which aren't as well structured as this. You get a much more limited view. And my idea was also democratizing information a little bit, where right now the people who are taking advantage of these early stage pitch sessions are the VCs, right? They have, some of the VCs have scouts that go to each of these companies or each of these sessions, and they're feeding this into their funnel, right? We don't. There may be some real hidden gems in some of the early stage pitch deals. So other than taking notes in different places and having this end up somewhat disorganized, how do you do this in a structured way? And Greg had a spreadsheet that was tracking these and attempting to put objective valuations on whatever information we got. And my take on that was, let's see if we can build a website or a platform around it to share that information. And so what I did was hooked up with a guy who had a survey platform that was really targeted at flavors and building building food formulations. But the software infrastructure was all there, and we took that underlying code and repurposed some of that into this framework.
Yeah, Neil, can you sign in? I have to look mine up in my
I
computer.
probably do too. Oh, you know what?
Well, I use the same password.
Okay, so so this is so the idea of this platform was to take what we had, and so Greg built a spreadsheet with a set of formulas in it, with a set of specific recorded classification items for each company, and we basically built a platform that took that list and put it into a survey and then share it.
So this is a platform that both of you developed?
Yeah, I developed the I'm just going to call them algorithms. That's almost overrating them. I mean, I developed the underlying equations, the weights, the scales that you'll see, etc. And Neil put together the team that, or found the guy who then put this into a website that you can go on. You store your information on there. You can allow other people to look at that information, right? Bill,
So I
Neil can give you
basically
that
just
stuff.
wrote the spec and did some of the high-level coding that built this website, right? So taking using Greg's formula. So most of this is data-driven. Some of this is hard.
And how came you up with the formula, Greg? So these are historical performance?
No, they are, that's what I want them to become. I mean, we've got like 40 companies in here. We can do that once we start getting feedback on how companies perform. But what we've got is we've got actually more than that. We have like 40 companies in this thing that have presented during the last 6 months or 7 months that this has been up. In addition to that, we have 20 companies that presented 3 years ago who I got the sheets for. And I went, and as far as I could get information from those sheets, I put those companies in here. So we do have this, like, again, it's, I don't know whether it's 10 companies, 20 companies, but something like that many that at least hypothetically, we have 3 years of their performance, that if we could find them, then I could start actually making these weights statistical rather than just what my belief is about the way the world works. Right now, the weights here, and yeah, basically it's weights. That's a good way of describing it. They represent my idea about how the world works.
Linear regression, multiple linear regression, this is the model that you would apply to.
That would be the easiest way to solve for the true weights. Yeah, multiple. Right. You can solve for the true weights through actually. Well, I have to work that out because there are some nonlinear relationships in this. But what you could do is you can solve those linear regression for partial elements of this, and then combine them in a fairly easy nonlinear regression, or you could actually solve the whole thing with a nonlinear regression package. That, you know, nonlinear regression also solves linear regression problems, so you can put them together and just solve it all as a nonlinear regression. But yeah, that's the idea. Once we really get information on performance, we can do that. But there are also things you can do short of that. So for example, you can do a linear regression to just see how well this thing predicts voting on gold sheets as sort of a short-term thing that you could get the info really quickly. So you could at least say, what does, what do these things tell us in terms of just predicting what the crowd evaluation is?
That's investors' behavior, not company performance.
Yeah.
The other method that we could apply would be structural equation model, because the structural equation model has then the advantage that it considers the network effects. So there is probably a correlation between what the crowd would well as the direct parameters. And the direct parameters affect both the crowd thinking as well as the outcome. And they are linked as well, but we can talk about
Yeah, and I mean, and there's certain things that are just hard equations here. So, for example, that there is like size of the market times market share. You don't take size of the market and subtract market share, right? I mean, this is just logic, that you take size of market and you multiply that by your market share if you want to find sales. So those kind of not judgment things, but just kind of modeling things, how does the world work, are built in already. That's part of the equations behind that. But there are other things. There is the thing that it's not probability of success plus market size, right? It's probability, as that equation showed you up above, it's probability of success times market size. There is that your share of the company that you own is the pre-valuation, what you put in, what additional money has to come in, et cetera. Again, that's an equation. We don't say, well, it doesn't need very much money, therefore I give it a 7. It's not that. It's going to need X amount of dollars. That will dilute me by this much. That's an equation, right? So that's how it's set.
There's a second aspect that's particularly there, which is what's their probability of raising more money, and
Right.
if they don't, right? So, right, just these things sometimes affect, right, multiple factors. But the main factor, the two factors that this creates is the ROI, what we call the ROI and the exit percent. And the exit percent started to be biased for 10%, saying we believe that on average 90% of these companies are going to fail. That's just a statistical stake in the ground, right? And therefore, the biasing factors that we apply, right, either influence that in positive or negative direction.
Right, and there is, yeah, I was saying, well, it's just my weights, but that's not quite true, in that we do know just through the literature that it's not half of the companies succeed, and it's not 1 out of 100 of the companies succeed. We know the range is more like somewhere between 1 in 5 and 1 in 10, or 1 in 7 to 1 in 12, something like that, is the probability of success. We know that the return on investment in this is maybe around, that the return on angel investment is maybe around 12% or something like that. So we can use those to adjust a little bit, that we're not completely lacking in information here in getting the right weights on things. So that I've tried to integrate that into this. But I'm going to show you how you just put in a company. Like today, this is what I was doing as I sat here this morning. So first you type in the name of the company, and then you hit search. And now what that will tell me is if someone else has already rated this company. All right. This company, Hotshot, has not been searched, not been rated. So I then click yeah, I want to add the company. I come down here. I say this is a company that sells to businesses, that the company is in the energy and utility business, that the product type is a software app, and that the company presenter is John Smith. All right. And I go save. All right, now the company's in there. All right, so we've got a company in there. Someone else comes along. They're going to say, oh, I want to also rate Hotshot. Hotshot will then end up having 2 reviews instead of 1. So now I'm going to enter my review for Hotshot. This doesn't work if I say yes, so I always say no. At least I don't think it works. You may know how to make it work. So then this is the next screen that comes up. So then what I say is, oh, I'm sitting here listening. The first thing this guy's talking about is the market. So then I click on market and go right there. If the first thing the person was presenting on was the team, I'd click up here, team, and go there. Okay, so market. The key thing is this idea of scales. So now this is, I don't like this so much because this is kind of a judgment. But it's a judgment I think most people can get this one right and consistently. Do you think this is around a $100 million market, or do you think this is a $1 billion market or a $10 billion? So although it's a real judgment call, it's kind of, those differences are so big that I suspect people mostly can get it in about the right place. Yeah, right, the target market, exactly. So I'm going to say this is about I think this is going to be about a $1 billion in revenue market as a whole. All right, competition. 3 or 4 startups are direct competitors. This is basically, though, what it is what is this guy saying it is? So I'm taking them at their word. At a 1 is that there are several established companies already in, and many startups are direct competitors. A 5 is we know of no known competitors in this space. That's what they claim, and we find that believable, right? Getting back, the idea is that this is, again, as close as I can come to being an observation of what the person is telling me, not my feeling about this. I want it to be a description of an observation. You're going to keep saying, well, but that's not really used judgment. I know that, but I'm telling you the direction I want to move in, and to the degree that I can make these scales much more the description of an observation, to me that's a good thing. Because all I want to do is observe, I want to avoid judging. So I'm going to say, all right, it's somewhere between several established companies and 3 or 4 startups, so I'm going to give that a 2. Market access. Must access the market by word of mouth or direct sales with internal sales force or industry meetings and journals. Market is geographically dispersed. So this is really difficult market to access. That's how I describe it. Really easy market to access. There's a dominant player marketing the product to a very well-defined a market. So it's kind of winner take all. You go out, you make one sale, you get to be the top guy, you get the market. Geography is not a barrier to marketing. And then again, this needs a lot of improvement. So I'm going to keep saying, but I want to make it better in this direction. The other thing is that if we say if you've been making 300% growth over several years, that must be a really accessible market. So you can go ahead and click 5 for that. All right, so I'm going to say this is a 5. Infrastructure barriers. Major infrastructure investment needed or significant problems in obtaining permits. Example, gas stations needed for expansion of automobile and were needed for the expansion of the automobile industry. Other end, buyer does not need other investment or process changes, no infrastructure capital. A lot of internet companies are 5s because some of them aren't, but if it's something where, okay, you just buy the software, you use the app, you don't use the app, you don't have to change anything else in your life, that's a 5. I'm not going to go through all these scales, but again, the idea is that the scales describe a situation that you can observe about the company. It's not, I think this is a great thing for this company or something like that to the degree possible.
The whole idea of putting the scales and making them visible was to drive some level, to the extent possible, of consistency around what my 1 and your 1 are relatively equivalent, so that whatever ratings we get, we can at least correlate somewhat.
Yeah. Just a statement, maybe one reason why I don't think these scales are that great is I've done this a lot where I've been paid to do it and put in the real time to do it. And I know what good scales look like, and these are pretty mediocre scales. The way you test the scales is to simply, if we had 4 people rating each company, if we saw everyone was rating them the same, then we'd know that we had a good descriptive scale where very little judgment was being involved because everyone's giving the same answer. Deal. Let me jump down to that. This is a more quantitative type thing, right? Because there's an equation that gives us the amount of the company that we own, and that's what this is all about. So it's not so much judgments. We have a thing where if they don't tell us very much, we just use the default values. Okay, so right there, I just click on that, and I've got the size of the raise, the pre-money valuation, the total future raises, the average discount to future raises, all in there. I actually have information about that. Then I go back and I say, oh, he's only raising $500,000, 0.5. Oh, his pre-money valuation, like all these guys have been coming through, is $9 million. These are off the charts, right? Everyone thinks they're worth $9 million, etc. Exit valuation. This is actually the thing that I think needs the most work. Come on, for one thing, Well, it doesn't come up, but it always does. There we go. I have 3 different possibilities for exit valuation. Simple. You just put in whatever the guy tells you his exit valuation is going to be. Right? That's the easiest. Liquidity. Again, I usually use the default values. He's starting in 2015. His revenues in that year, I think, is going to be 0.5. You know, this is something that, again, I don't like it because it's judgment, but you can at least say, okay, he's already got 300,000. Next year, yeah, it's very reasonable. He does 500,000, or they've already got $1 million, etc. Growth factor, a lot of times I leave that the same just to make it kind of equivalent across companies, but you'd want to know that. Liquidity event year and the value multiplier in that liquidity event year, you can put that in. Other, I put this in, and there used to be a note here that said this should almost always be 3. The reason this is in here is in case there's something like the guy is involved in a dispute over his IP or something. So it's something we don't see very often, but it's really dramatic, and I wanted to be able to put it down somewhere. Oh, I should note that Neil has the capability in here. If I did this at a 1, I can click over here, right, and put a note in here, Neil? Is that right? That's where that goes.
So Safe H2O would have qualified for that because he was still negotiating license for his product from San Diego.
Yeah, so you just put in patent dispute if you want, right? Save, right? All right, and then finally interest level, and 3, and then I can click here to save all that information. Your review is posted.
The
Okay.
interest level is the subjective, right? The whole idea of the interest level is completely separate from these reported objective valuations. So the whole reason for this is, as I'm taking notes, do I want to go back to this and look at it? I have another thing to sort by that says, you know, even if I rated this company something out of the park, you know, I don't care about, you know, healthcare. I don't care about, you know, whatever gaming applications. So my interest level may be low.
Yeah.
I'm not passing judgment on it.
Fred, I think that might be where you want to stop the recording.